Good morning, everyone. Rick and Deb here. We are in Augusta, Kansas. More specifically, we are in the high school parking lot. You see, I've got on the appropriate attire this morning as we're going to be visiting the 250th anniversary of the United States of America Touring Museum. It's 9 o'clock. It's Friday morning. It's May the 8th. So, if you have nothing else to do, come on along and join Deb and I as we explore this wonderful Freedom Truck, as it's called. Now, these are going to be touring all over the country, and we just happened to luck out and have one like within 30-45 minutes of home, because after today it'll be much later in the year and we'd have to travel like a 3-hour drive to see one of these. So I found out literally early this morning by accident. So here we are. I'm going to turn this thing around and we're going to go look at the Freedom Truck, as it is called. Okay, so give me just a moment. We're going to turn this. Okay, there's our little Buick Mobile there. Okay, let's go take a look at the Freedom Truck first, and then we will go into the traveling museum. I will be taking pictures of this later on when we get done, but I do want to get a good look at the Freedom Truck here first. Okay, it says celebrating 250 years of the American spirit. Okay, now let's go on down. We get a complete look here at the Freedom Truck. I like that. That is so cool. And of course, there's George Washington there. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? The Freedom Truck. What I would do if I were you out there, get on the web, type in celebrating 250 years, the Freedom Truck, and see what's going to be in your general area. This is very well worth the trip, even if you got to drive a little ways to get here, like we did this morning. But after today, as far as I could tell, it's going to be a 2 or 3, 4 hour drive just to get to one of these things. But they've got a bunch of these. So that I'm not real sure of. But we're going to go in and we're going to take a look here just in a minute. Let's take a look at the whole truck here. Look at this. Boy, that's really sharp. I like that. That's really nice. Freedom 250 years. Boy, look at that truck. That's just beautiful. Wow-wee, look at that. I like that. That's really nice. And then they got banners up and down. This is Ohio Street here in Augusta, Kansas. Let's go take a look at some of these flags they've got here. We might as well do all of it while we're here. There's the front end of the semi. Isn't that cool? Wouldn't you just love to be able to drive this thing around the country? I would just love it. I really would. They got these banners all up and down this part anyway, until you get to the turnoff. But there it is. And they got the flags waving here. And I wore my red, white, and blue flag shirt this morning. It's a little cloudy this morning, but it's not real windy, it's not real cold or anything like that. It is a little cloudy. Let's walk around here and let's look at the other side and see if it's any different on the other side here. It may be the same thing. We're going to find out. And there again, there's the front of the semi. Yeah, this is just so cool. Yeah, let's go down here. Oh, I think this is a little bit different on this side. I'll make sure I take pictures, of course, before we leave. And here is Patriots Welcome, it says. Okay. freedom250.org. George Washington crossing the Delaware, I do believe it was. The Freedom Truck Mobile Museum. There's a few people here. It's not real crowded, but we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at what's on the inside of the Freedom Truck. So hold on here just a minute.
So yeah, you'll enter on this door, exit on the other side. All but 3 screens are interactive as well. We just ask that you leave food and drink out here. But other than that, we hope you enjoy and thank you so much.
Let's go.
Well, I gotta go over and check this gentleman's hand over here in the colonial garb here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
If I was any better, couldn't stand it.
Okay. I like your outfit there.
Thank you.
That is really nice. Okay, I guess we're gonna go inside.
Go inside, welcome up.
Here we go.
To talk to you, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine.
Oh.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, here we go. We're going on the inside here. The door will open. There we go. All right. Boy. The shot heard around the world. And here's the Battle of Lexington. Talking about that a little bit. On the morning of April 19, 1777, Redcoats met a small group of colonial militia that assembled on Lexington's town green. Though greatly outnumbered, these Minutemen were determined to protect their homes and slow the British advance. Upon entering Lexington and seeing the armed colonels, the British forces quickened their march to slow run, and they've been trained, the advance units to point up to a line of battle across the field. The British major in charge ordered the rebels to disperse. Moments later, shots were fired, and then a series of volleys, 8 militiamen were killed. And here's one of Paul Revere's lanterns. Isn't that really cool? That's really cool. Okay, we're going to try to make our way around. We may let these people go on, and we're going to just take our time. Here's the Battle of Concord, a clash at Concord Bridge. I'm just going to let you can pause it and read that. And here's the Battle of Bunker Hill.
GPS signal lost.
A lot of information here. Boy, howdy. Abigail Adams to John Adams, Almighty God, cover the heads of our countrymen and be a shield to our dear friends. John Quincy Adams, March 1846, said, I saw with my own eyes those fires and heard Britannia's thunders in the Battle of Bunker's Hill, and witnessed the tears of my mother and mingled with them my own at the fall of Warren, a dear friend of my father, a beloved physician to me. Okay, there's quite a bit of information here. And then we got George Washington saying something to us. I'm not sure, I can't hear it. I think we'll just start in here and we'll try to work our way around. It's very noisy in here right now, but hopefully it'll kind of calm down here a little bit. I'm hoping. I tell you what, we may pause this just a minute and we'll get back here in a minute.
It was kind of fun. They went by.
Okay, we're inside the museum now, and we're going to go from start to finish. I kind of made a mistake, but I'm going to have to film this all over again. Kind of waiting for everything kind of clear out here a little bit. We got a timeline here. What was it like to live under the British rule? 1763, the French and Indian War, 1745 to 1763, and then 1765, the Stamp Act, and then the Quartering Act is right there, and then 1776 to 1777, the Declaratory Act and the Townshend Act, and it goes on down. 1774, the First Continental Congress, is right there. Okay, here, got it. Get back here. This way. Okay. This is the First Continental Congress, September 5th to October 6th of 1774. And then 1773, the Boston Tea Party, which we've all heard of that. In 1770, the Boston Massacre. Yeah, you'll have to pause that and you can read that later. There's a lot of stuff here. George III, the King's man. Here, I'll back out. Maybe you can pause that and read that later. There's a lot of information here. The Royal Proclamation of Rebellion and Sedation. The line of conduct now seems chalked out. The New England governments are in a state of rebellion. Blows must decide whether they are to be subject to this country or independent. King George III, Prime Minister, Lord North, November 18th, 1774. Okay, that must be King George right there. George versus George, it says. Okay, we're going to go on down and take a look at this up here. And we're going to go on. Okay. This over here is just a question. Are you a loyalist or a patriot? I think we're going to go on and go around that right now. George versus George. Okay. And we've got Washington the Patriots. We'll look at that here in just a minute. There is an awful lot to read, though. A lot of information. And, yeah. Yeah, I'll just gotta wait for, we can go down the road here a little bit. Yeah, about the two different Georges here. But I'm not going to, let's go on. We got Team Washington, the Patriots. Okay. Team Washington, the Patriots. George Washington, 1732-1799. Emerged as the foremost leader of the American Revolution and first president of the United States. Washington gained early experience as a surveyor and later as an officer during the French and Indian War, where he learned both strengths and the limits of British military power. Washington sought a British Army commission but was denied. By the 1760s, Washington had grown critical of Britain's attempts to tax and control the colonies. Without representation, he opposed measures like the Stamp Act and the Coercive Acts, believing they violated colonial rights. Yet he was cautious, initially hoping for reconciliation. When conflict erupted in 1775, Washington was unanimously chosen as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He viewed the struggle as one of the principal self-government of the rule of force. Washington's perseverance through early defects, his ability to keep the army intact, and eventually victories at Trenton, Princeton, and Yorktown secured American independence. For Washington, the American Revolution was not merely a break from England, but to establish a new nation. His leadership allowed the colonists to successfully wage war and emerge as a constitutional government. Then we got the Olive Branch Petition. There's a lot of reading here. George Washington spectacles. There's a picture of George Washington's glasses. We got Paul Revere, the shot heard around the world. Okay, Paul Revere. To stop the rebellion, British General Thomas Gage was ordered to capture colonial leaders and seize hidden weapons. On April 18, 1775, Boston's silversmith Paul Revere, the courier of Massachusetts colony legislature, learned that a large body of redcoats was marching to Concord. He learned that a large body of redcoats were marching to Concord. He and other riders raced to warn colonists. Revere sped through past villages and farms, alerting militias and warning Samuel Adams and John Hancock, members of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, who were in nearby Lexington. There, his urgent midnight ride roused communities before British forces. Before sunrise, militiamen stood ready in Lexington. Revere's swift warning helped spark the first armed clash of the American Revolution and turned resistance into open war for independence. And here's a famous one if by land and two if by sea. Old North Church, Boston's oldest, survived as a secret signal tower, the Sons of Liberty. On April 18, 1775, 2 lanterns shone from its steeple, warning Paul Revere that British troops were crossing the Charles River, sending him into the famed midnight ride. Okay, here's the Battle of Lexington. And there again, you had to pause and read that. And here's the Battle of Concord, Clash of Concord Bridge. Here's something from Ralph Waldo Emerson, Concord Hymn, July 4, 1837. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmer stood and fired the shot was heard around the world. July 4, 1837. And then the Battle of Bunker Hill, there's a lot of information there, but you can stop and read it. It's a lot of information. Whenever old George Washington, he's saying something, but we can't hear what he's saying. Oh, we got this other wall to look at. We're going to go there and get here in just a minute. They got part of this blocked by the door. The Roots of America. The foundational principles of America are rooted in the Western and Judeo-Christian tradition that the colonists inherited with their British roots. The heritage of ideas shaped the American mind long before the colonial debate with England. Oh boy, there's just a lot of stuff here. Athens and Rome. The Greco-Roman classics gave the American colonists a framework for understanding nature, reason, politics, and virtue. This shaped the view of the different forms of government and the importance of democratic republic, the need to protect liberty, corruption of tyranny, and the natural laws that should determine 2 principles of government. Jerusalem. Religious faith and special Christianity shaped European and colonial thought and tradition, teaching that the laws of nature and nature's God serve as the best foundation for the government. The truth that each person is made in the image and likeness of God is the basis of human equality and underscored the principle that government should protect individuals' rights and dignity. Yes. There's the Adkin Bible. King John, Magna Carta 1215, we have granted to all free men of our kingdom, for us and our heirs, forever all the underwritten liberties to be had and be held by them and their heirs of us and our heirs forever. Okay, now we got up here. We got New Hampshire. New Hampshire was founded by Captain John Mason and his proprietary colony in 1623 for the purpose of fishing and trade. The colony initially fell under the jurisdiction of Massachusetts Bay, but in 1679, King Charles II granted New Hampshire its own charter as a crown colony. The colony remained unstable until 1741, when New Hampshire finally acquired its own governor. Known for shipbuilding, New Hampshire colonists manufactured ships for maritime trade, fishing, and the British Royal Navy. Among the settlers were Puritans who had immigrated from Plymouth and Massachusetts, as well as anglings from England. Yeah, and this just goes, there's a whole ton of these here. Yeah, we'll just pick on one or two here. Here's Virginia. Although there had been other attempts to establish a British colony in America, the first permanent settlement was Jamestown, founded by the Virginia Company in 1607. Lacking survival skills and racked by disease, these early settlers almost starved until Captain John Smith took charge and implemented the biblical maxim, "He who would not work might not eat." In 1624, Virginia was rechartered as a crown colony. Most Virginians were Anglican and were required by law to attend weekly church services. Virginia became one of the most influential colonies due to its tobacco industry, with many of its wealthiest plantation owners. And here's the individuals who signed this. Okay, let's go on down. I think that's enough. There's just a whole ton of these. Well, we read a couple of them. Now let's go on to the first settlements. Cape Henry and Jamestown, Plymouth, Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock, and the settlements, the Puritans of Massachusetts Bay. Oh wow, there was just a ton of reading. Cape Henry and Jamestown. In 1606, King James granted a charter to the Virginia Company of London to establish a colony in the New World. Soon after, settlers settled for Virginia, and during 144 days at sea, upon landing at Cape Henry, they erected a large wooden cross and claimed the land for their Christian faith, showing how deeply faith inspired and shaped the Britons' earliest colonization efforts in North America. After exploring the Chesapeake Bay, the colonists chose a spot upstream on the James River for their permanent settlement, which they named James Forte after the king. We know it today as Jamestown. The colonists' faith sustained them through many hardships, from mosquitoes, disease, and failed crops in the New World. Boy, howdy, I tell you what.
I just realized that when I was like, wait, there's not similar bushes.
The Puritans of Massachusetts Bay. Yeah, you'll just have to, I'm sorry, that's just a lot of reading. I don't know, you'll just have to pause that and read all that. Oh, that's just crazy. The Battle of Long Island, a National Guard heritage painting by Dominic DeAndre, courtesy of the National Guard Bureau. The prayer at Valley Fort, First Freedom Art Company, Washington crossing the Delaware, courtesy of the Met with Peel, Vibert and Company, Paris and New York, 1851 to 1852. Yeah. This is the contribution of art and imaginary for the trailer exterior. Okay, I think we've been all the way around here. I think we're going to take a break and we'll be back here in just a little bit. Yeah, I think we're going to go on. We're going to kind of have to wait here for a little bit because you can hear yourself thinking there right now. Hopefully all this come through with all the noise. I apologize for all that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy.
Your presence here today.
Yeah.
All those who transformed a dream into.
That's the first room here.
United States of
Of course, we got another room to go through, but I'm going to kind of wait here for a little bit. So we'll be back hopefully here in just a little bit. Okay, well, while we're waiting, we can do some more of these. That room in there is just packed full. We can't even get in there. Let's do, I can't remember what we did before. I don't know, let's do North Carolina. North Carolina. After the two halves of Carolina divided in 1712, North Carolina became a crown colony in 1729. The first settlers in the area were farmers and traders from Virginia. North Carolina's main crops were tobacco, rice, and indigo, and its vast pine forest provided timber for shipbuilding. It also supplied tar, pitch, and turpentine, all essentials to the building of British naval ships. African slaves were imported from Virginia and South Carolina to work on North Carolinian plantations along with other indentured servants, extending back to 1669 Fundamental Constitutions of Carolina. North Carolina had a history of religious toleration. Although the Church of England was established church, the colony permitted different religious groups such as Catholic, Jews, and other Protestant sects to settle and freely practice their faith. Okay, that was North Carolina. All right, here. Oh, let's try Massachusetts. John Winthrop was given a charter to establish the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630 as a refuge for Puritans fleeing religious persecution in England. In 1691, Massachusetts provided a new charter that expanded its territory to include Plymouth Colony, the settlement established by the Pilgrims. The fishing industry, codfish in particular, thrived in the colony and brought greater religious diversity, often to the dismay of the Puritans. Abolitionist sentiment was a major force in Massachusetts, and the first successful freedom suit in colonial America was decided in the city of Ipswich in 1766 when an enslaved woman won her freedom. Okay. All right. Let's look at Rhode Island. Rhode Island. Minister Roger Williams founded Rhode Island in 1636 after Massachusetts banned him for his fervent advocacy of religious liberty. Williams established the town of Providence as a sanctuary in which all Protestant and Jewish beliefs were to be tolerated. As a result, Rhode Island attracted Puritans, Baptists, Quakers, and separatists generally, as well as Jews and Native American Indians. Rhode Island's charter in 1663 was the first to ensure religious toleration. Rhode Island was a trading hub, importing I don't know what that is, sugarcane and molasses from the Caribbean and exporting lumber and other colonial goods. There was also a thriving whaling and boat building industry. The colony also banned slavery. Okay, well that was good. And there's the signers, Stephen Hopkins and William Ellery. Okay, let's see what else we got here. That was Rhode Island. Okay, here. Let's look at Maryland. Maryland. In 1632, George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, applied to King Charles I for a charter to establish Maryland as a haven for persecuted English Catholics. When settlers arrived in 1664, they celebrated the first Catholic Mass in British North America to encourage immigration. Lord Baltimore offered colonists the 50 acres of land for every person transported to the colony. Puritans and Anglicans also started settling in the colony in large numbers, and this shift in the colony's religious demographic prompted the Colonial Assembly to pass the Act of Toleration in 1649. The first law passed in the British North American colonies that required religious tolerance for all Christians. Maryland's economy centered around tobacco. As the demand for tobacco increased, Marylanders increasingly turned to indentured servants and African slaves to plant and harvest their cash crops. Okay, I think we've about got all of these. Let's look at Georgia. The last of 13 British American colonies, Georgia was established by the social reformer James Oglethorpe in 1732 as a proprietary colony to be populated by debtors and the poor. The colony initially banned slavery and alcohol consumption, as detrimental to the colonists' work ethic and unsuccessfully pursued the production of silk as a colony's industry. Georgia became a crown colony in 1755 under royal governance. Slavery was introduced as population of slaves and free settlers increased. The colony's economy centered on rice, indigo, cotton, tobacco, and corn. Georgia's population was diverse, although Georgia's original charter prohibited Catholics and Jews. Oglethorpe believed in religious toleration. Protestant refugees from Salzburg arrived in 1734. As soon as Anglicans, Lutherans, and Quakers immigrated to the colony as well, even with the Church of England as established church where there was widespread religious pluralism. Okay, all right. I think we've read enough of those. We're still waiting for. Okay, we're going to go on. This says, "'Tis time to part." Common Sense addressed the inhabitants of America on the following interfering subjects of the origin and define of government in general, with concise remarks on the English Constitution of monarchy and hereditary suffocation. I can't pronounce it. Thoughts of the present state of American affairs, of the present ability of Americans, with some miscellaneous reflections, written by Englishman Thomas Paine. No man knows a father creating heaven, or those whom choose and common good ordained. Common Sense, published anonymously in January 1776, Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense was the first clarion call for independence and remains one of the best-selling titles in all American history. The population of 2.5 million people, Common Sense sold 100,000 copies in 3 months and an estimated 500,000 copies over the course of the American Revolution. Everything that is right and reasonable pleads for separation. The blood of the slain and the weeping voice of nature cries, "'Tis time to part." Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Join us or die. The divided stakes symbolized the different colonies and their need to work together for their common defense. First used during the French and Indian War, it later became a rallying cry for the colonial unity against British tyranny. Give me liberty or give me death. In 1775, as British tyranny grew and tensions escalated, the Second Virginia Convention met at St. John's Church in Richmond to decide the colony's fate. There, Patrick Henry's fiery "Give me liberty or give me death" speech inspired his fellow delegates, including George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, to take the first bold step toward American independence. And that's what it's all about, is our freedom. That's what this is all about. The debate and vote for independence. In June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee proposed that the Continental Congress independents form foreign alliances and draft a confederation. Still divided, Congress delayed the vote until July when delegates sought instructions. Debate began July 1. John Dickinson urged delay, but John Adams argued forcibly for immediate independence, earning praise from Thomas Jefferson. In the first vote, 9 colonies supported independence. Pennsylvania and South Carolina opposed. Delaware split, and New York abstained. Edward Rutledge sought a 1-day delay so delegates could reconsider their previous vote. On July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of American independence. Edward Rutledge secured South Carolina support. John Dickinson and other Pennsylvania moderates abstained, flipping that colony's vote in favor of independence. The deciding vote came down to Caesar Rodney, who despite a severe illness, made a daring 80-mile ride through the rainy night to break Delaware's tie and vote for independence. New York joined a week later, making support unanimous. Having passed Richard Henry Lee's resolution, Congress now needed a resolution. I'm sorry they're so close together, but they got everything just squeezed in here, it seems like. Well, that air feels pretty good. To escape from the protection we have in British rule by declaring independence would be like destroying a house before we have got another. In winter, with a small family, then asking a neighbor to take us in and finding he is unprepared. John Dickinson, special to the Continental Congress, July 1, 1776. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. John Adams to Abigail Adams, July 3rd, 1776. Then we have down here, when forced therefore to resort to arms for redress, an appeal to the tribunal of the world was deemed proper for our justification. This was the object of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson to Henry Lee, May 8, 1825. That's what it's all about. And here is a copy of the Declaration of Independence. I gotta scoot back here just a little bit. There it is. Congress, July 4, 1776, unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. And of course, there's all the signatures. Okay. The making of the Declaration. In June 1776, as the momentum for independence grew, the Second Continental Congress appointed a committee of 5 to draft a formal statement declaring America's independence. The committee consisted of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston. The committee elected Thomas Jefferson to write the first draft. Jefferson asked Adams to take the lead, but Adams declined, giving several reasons. Jefferson was a Virginian, while Adams was from Massachusetts. Jefferson, a Southerner, would be better received. Adams feared his own draft and would face harsher scrutiny due to his outspoken support, and finally believed Jefferson had the superior pen. Over 17 days, Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence with important input from Adams to Benjamin Franklin. They drew ideas from George Mason's draft of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Congress cut a quarter of the text and made several important changes, including adding references to the Supreme Judge of the world and divine providence. And that's the Committee of the 5. Though Jefferson was the primary penman of the Declaration, and the other party members reviewed and edited the draft before presenting it to Congress for debate and further revisions. And there's got them in order. Number 1 is Thomas Jefferson. Number 2 is Robert Livingston. Number 3 is Benjamin Franklin. Number 4 is Robert Sherman. And number 5 is John Adams. In 1776, the committee which drafted the Declaration of Independence. That is just really cool. Okay, well, I kind of hit a bottleneck right here. I'm going to have to kind of wait for a little bit, but we'll be back as soon as we can. Okay, I think we're going to go on if we can. Adoption and meaning of the Declaration. On July 4, 1776, after 2 days of editing, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. Philadelphia printer John Dunlap and his assistants worked through the night to produce between 150 and 200 Dunlap broadside copies, the very first printings of the Declaration. By morning, these sheets were ready to spread the news. John Hancock sent them to state legislatures, key officials, and General Washington's headquarters in Manhattan to rally support and unify the colonies. The Declaration of Independence asserts people are endowed by God with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government exists to secure these rights. When government fails to do so, the people may alter or establish or abolish it and create a new government to serve their safety and happiness. Detailing Crown's abuses, the Declaration brands British rule as despotic and justifies replacing it to secure American liberty. Equality. We hold these truths to be self-evident that men are created equal. All men means that all men and women are equally human, and by the order of the creation, equality does not mean everyone is the same in every way, but that they are equal by nature and before the law, despite their unique differences in talents. This ensures the same protection and opportunity under law for anyone to prosper and flourish. Liberty, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. These founders drew their rights, understanding of rights from natural and divine law, reason, and revelation. They believe God created humans for liberty, a design written into human nature. True flourishing comes only with the liberty to make our own way in the world and pursue the happiness of human life. An expression of the American mind, neither aiming at originality of principle or sentiment, not yet copied from any particular or previous writing. It was intended to be an expression of the American mind. Thomas Jefferson to Henry Lee, May 8, 1825. The first phase of the war, American retreat from New York. The Battle of Long Island, a National Guard heritage painting by Dominic DeAndre, courtesy of the National Guard Bureau. The Battle of Long Island, August 27, 1776. After forcing the British to evacuate Boston in March of 1776, General Washington anticipated a British attack against New York. On August 22nd, the British began landing 15,000 to 20,000 British regulars and Haitian mercenaries on Long Island, going up against the 9,000 to 10,000 soldiers of the Continental Army. On the night of August 26th and the morning of August 27th, the British, aided by loyalists and concerned locals, outflanked the American line and overwhelmed their position, forcing them to regroup behind the Brooklyn Heights. Washington knew that escaping Long Island with his army would require a miracle. George Washington gets his miracle August 29, 1776. Surrounded by Brooklyn Heights, George Washington knew his army had escaped across the East River without alerting nearby British forces. On the night of August 29, 1776, a thick fog concealed the movement as 9,000 men along with artillery and supplies were ferried safely to Manhattan. Washington was the last to depart, still hidden by fog. Though New York City remained in British hands, the daring retreat preserved the Continental Army and kept the fight for independence alive. Okay, well, we're slowly making our way across here. Let's keep on going. I apologize for this, all this noise. Hopefully it's going to come out on the video. The Battle of Trenton and Princeton. George Washington crossing the Delaware, 1851, with Goupil, Vibert and Company, Paris and New York, 1851 to 52. Marshall Roberts, New York, 1852, died 1880. Okay, that's just where the galleries, I think, are of that picture there. The letters from the Revolution. Okay. Turning point, the campaign of 1777. The march to Valley Forge, December 19, 1777, painted by William Brooke Thomas Trago, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1883. Okay. Valley Forge requisition receipt. This manuscript bears the signatures of officers representing the 7 companies of the 3rd New Hampshire Regiment. Each officer acknowledged receipt of various quantities of stockings for use of the company. Each entry was dated Valley Forge, January 20, 1778. And that's what it looked like right there. Their requisition receipts. And down here is the Saratoga campaign, July to October 1777. In July 1777, British General John Burgoyne led 8,000 troops from Canada down to Lake Champlain toward Albany, aiming to cut New England off from the other colonies. American generals Philip Schuyler and Benedict Arnold repealed his process, leaving Burgoyne stranded at Saratoga. Outnumbered, beat Horatio Gates' Continental soldiers with the first battle of September 18th, but suffered heavy losses. Gates struck back on October 7th with a decisive victory, forcing Burgoyne to surrender his entire army 10 days later. The French alliance, February 1778. After the war's start, France secretly supplied the Continental Army but avoided formal alliance. After the Battle of Saratoga, that changed. In February 1778, France signed treaties with America and joined the war, providing supplies and troops with protection of the French Navy to aid the Continental Army. Okay. All right. Now, let's see here. We're going to have to go on down here. Well, there's a lot in this. There's a lot here, I'm telling you what. There's a lot here. I know it's horribly noisy in here, and I apologize for that. I didn't have no idea it'd be like this. One last great effort in closing battles. The Battle of Monmouth, June 28, 1778. In 1778, the British abandoned Philadelphia to consolidate their forces in New York. General Washington gave chase, and the army caught them at Monmouth, New Jersey. Despite seeming defeat, Washington rallied his men on the battlefield, inspiring them to fight. The inconclusive but intense battle proved the growing effectiveness of the Continental Army. And there it is right there. This is the Southern Campaign, 1776 to 1781. Assuming strong loyalist support in the South, the British turned to that region, seizing Savannah, Georgia in December 1778 and Charleston, South Carolina, May 1870. The Continental Army won battles at Kings Mountain and Cowpens, which stalled the British advance. Undeterred, the British Army under General Charles Lloyd Cornwallis moved across North Carolina and fought its way to Virginia. By the summer of 1781, American forces led by General Marquis de Lafayette were battling Cornwallis across the colony, pushing him toward coastal defenses and the possibility of a trap. Okay, down here, I have at last the happiness to inform you that we have had a day of glory and success. I most sincerely give thanks to him who is the giver of all victories, David Griffith, chaplain in the Continental Army, June 30, 1778. Victory on the battlefield. Cornwallis surrenders at Yorktown, October 19th, 1781. Here's the Treaty of Paris, September 3rd, 1783. There's the war had ended, a nation had begun. Cornwallis surrenders at Yorktown. After suffering key losses at Virginia, British Commander General Cornwallis retreated to Yorktown and fortified that port city, expecting reinforcements by sea. General Marquis de Lafayette, acting on Washington's orders, moved his troops to hold British forces there, while General Washington and French Commander Rochambeau led their armies south to join the attack. A French fleet blocked any rescue by sea, which Allied troops cut off by land. For the next 3 weeks, they combined American and French armies besieged Cornwallis's men. Okay. On September 3rd, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain formally recognized the United States of America as its sovereign nation. The new nation gained all land east of the Mississippi River, north of Florida and south of Canada, plus the fishing rights of Newfoundland and the Gulf of Lake St. Lawrence. Although its property rights and prisoner releases were addressed, and both sides pledged perpetual peace. Okay, let's see if we can go on now. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to wait here just a minute. But this is the trailer, inside the trailer, and it's very, very, very interesting. I try to do pretty good, but it's so incredibly loud in here. It's just crazy. Hopefully you hear what I'm saying. It's just very crowded and a lot of noise. But we're going to try to go on here in just a little bit. We're going to kind of wait now. We're kind of in another bottleneck here. I'll be back as soon as I can. Okay, we'll go ahead and look at this right here. Washington Spies, America's first spy master. Espionage played a critical role in winning the war. After the Battle of Long Island, General Washington sought a volunteer to spy behind British lines. Young Nathan Hale stepped forward, but was captured and hanged in Manhattan, declaring, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." His sacrifice convinced Washington to build a professional intelligence network. In 1778, he tasked Benjamin Talmadge, aided by Caleb Brewster, Abraham Woodhull, and a still unknown number of others to create what would become the Culper spy ring. They used secret codes, aliases, and invisible ink to pass British plans to Washington. Remarkably, Washington himself did not know their true identities. None were ever caught, and some remain unknown today, including a mysterious woman known only as Agent 355. In July 1780, the ring's intelligence enabled a patriot deception that protected arriving French reinforcements, paving the way for decisive victory at Yorktown. And there's the route of the Culper spy ring. Number 1 was Robert Townsend. Number 2 was Austin Rowe. Number 3 is Caleb Brewster. And number 4 is Benjamin Talmadge. So that's that. Okay, now we got this down here. Can you decode this secret message sent by the Culper spy ring? No, I really doubt it. There's the original letter. And then here's the letter with code included. July 20, 1780. Your 356 came to hand and found me very ill with fever. All that I could do was send 724 with directions, who returned this day in great haste with the enclosed dispatch from 723. Also assures me of the arrival of Admiral Graves with 6592 of the line and is joined by 3 more out of 727. Also 1 in 50 and 2 of 40 219 and has sailed for 734 these will be there before this can be possibly reached, before this could possibly reach you. Also 8,635 are this day embarking at Whitestone before the mentioned 437. I am told for certain that 755 has only 7586, and the line I greatly fear for their destruction. We hourly expect a number of 178 and a quarter, of what end I know not. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, here's all these codes. 711 was General Washington. 712 was General Clinton. 721 was John Bolton, or known as Benjamin Talmadge. Samuel Clipper. 722 Abraham Woodhull. 723 Culper Jr. was Robert Townsend. 724 was Austin Rose. 178 was the enemy. 729 was I can't pronounce some of these words, I'm sorry. 734 Rhode Island. 746 London. 724 Caleb Brewster. 219 are guns. 356 are letters. 586 is sail. 755 is France. 733 is Boston. 473 is port. 592 is ships, and 635 are troops. So you'd have to take these numbers. Okay, like 356. This 356 would be this letter, and 724 would be Austin Rowe. Dispatch from 723 would be Robert Townsend. 727 would be New York. 219 would be, if I can find it here, guns. Okay, yeah, you just have to. That's how you have to do it. 635. If I can find it here, would be troops. 473 would be port. 755 would be Calibrucer, and 586 would be sail, and 178 would be enemy. So that's how you would decode letter with code included, July 20th, 1870. So that's how that would work. Okay, let's see if we can go on around now. Okay. To secure these rights, Declaration of Independence, the ground and foundation of future government. And then we the people as the first, that's the, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare and security, the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America, the preamble of the United States Constitution. There's George Washington's chair. He sat in. Okay. The Constitution also describes the relationship between the states and the federal government, sets up the process of amending the Constitution, and declares the Constitution to be supreme law of the land. The Constitution was signed on September 27, 1787, and sent to the states for ratification. Okay. Well, okay, here. What's this over here we got here? Over here. Wanted. Mercy Oates Warren. Wanted. Okay. Phyllis Wheatley. Wanted. James Fortin. Wanted. John Carroll. Wanted. Abigail Adams. Wanted. Neil Haynes. Wanted. James Armistead Lafayette. Wanted. William Lee. And finally wanted John Carroll. Okay. These were Native Americans, soldiers and supplies, freed black slaves, women, and religious leaders. What you do is you come over and you tap on one of these and bring up each one of these. Onega, I can't pronounce this. And then you go on. Soldiers and spies. Captain John Parker, a former blacksmith and seasoned soldier who fought in the French and Indian War, and so forth and so on. Despite having tuberculosis on April 19, 1775, Abigail Adams, that's why she is wanted. Abigail Adams. First had witnessed the American Revolution, June 1775, when she and her young son, John Quincy Adams, stood on a nearby hill and watched the British bombard Bunker Hill. Warned her to fly to the woods with our children, first sign of danger. Abigail was a keen political observer and correspondent. Her letters to John are filled with sharp insights and passionate advocacy. Her famous plea, remember the ladies. Okay. Okay. Mercy Otis Warren was a prolific writer, poet, historian, and playwright. Deeply connected to many of the most influential figures of the American Revolution. I tell you what, I don't know. You'll just have to pause that and read it later. I can't hardly talk in here. I've never heard it so noisy in my life. Margaret Molly Pitcher Corbin. Yeah, you'll just have to pause that. I don't know. This is absolutely crazy in here. I don't know how you're going to do this. Declaration of Independence, the ground and foundation of future government, a republic if you can keep it. I don't know how. We the people, well, I think I read that. I'll write down this over here, I think. Okay, let's go on. Defending the Constitution, Supporters of the new Constitution were called Federalists to promote ratification. Federalists Alexander Hamilton and John Jay wrote the Federalist Papers, a series of 85 newspapers, essays defending the Constitution written under the pen name of Publius, and urged the citizens of New York to ratify the Constitution. And there's another. After full experience of the insufficiency of the existing federal government, you are invited to deliberate upon a new Constitution for the United States of America. It has frequently been remarked that seems to have been reserved to the people of this country to decide by their conduct and example the most important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions. Alexander Hamilton, Federalist number 1. And there's the Bill of Rights. I think we're going to take a little break here for just a moment. We'll be back in a minute. Okay. The Bill of Rights and ratifying the Constitution. To win anti-federalist support, Federalists agreed to propose amendments to the Constitution, despite their assurances with many Americans feared that without explicit protections, their liberties would remain vulnerable. By an idea shaped by their experience under British rule to address these concerns, the Federalists promised to add a Bill of Rights. When Congress convened, James Madison proposed 12 amendments. 10 were ratified, becoming the Bill of Rights. These protect freedoms like religious speech, press, assembly, petition, the right to bear arms, fair trial rights, and protection against quartering of troops, unreasonable searches, self-incrimination, double jeopardy, property seizure. The 9th and 10th Amendments affirmed that rights were not listed were still retained by the people of states. This reflected federalism, a division of power between federal and state governments among the three branches. For his key role in shaping and defending both the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, Madison became known the father of the Constitution. James Madison, June 8, 1789. There is a great joy of the people who at present feel much declined to join their support to the cause of federalism. If they were satisfied in this one point, we ought not to disregard their inclination, but on principles of amity and moderation conform to their wishes and expressly declare the great rights of mankind secured under the Constitution. The promise of liberty. The American Foundation is the greatest experiment in liberty the world has yet seen. The Declaration of Independence recognized the self-evident and truths that all men are created equal and equally endowed with the fundamental rights. It would take the new nation nearly a century to fulfill these truths and secure these rights for a large segment of the American population. The founders anticipated that slavery would decline and wither away, and many states began restricting and abolishing slavery. In the original draft of the Declaration, Jefferson called the slave trade a cruel war against human nature itself. That language was removed to pass the Declaration, but the signers succeeded in establishing the principles of human equality that would drive slavery towards extinction. And here's the fugitive story sculpture. In 1869, sculpture by John Rogers honors the abolitionist movement and features John Greenleaf Whittier, Henry Ward Beecher, and William Lloyd Garrison. Garrison denounced the Constitution as a slave document, but his former protege, Frederick Douglass, studied the document and concluded, like Lincoln before him, that the Constitution was not pro-slavery. The revival of that argument marked a turning point in the abolition movement. Okay. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. President Abraham Lincoln, November 19, 1863. And this says here, Congress abolished the slave trade in 1807, but Southern interests defended the institution. Okay, abolitionists looked to the Declaration of Independence in their efforts to oppose slavery. Under President Lincoln, the Civil War was fought to preserve the Union and end slavery. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation declaring enslaved people in rebellious states free. The Union Secretary victory, along with the 13th and 14th Amendments, secured freedom and citizenship for enslaved Americans that laid the foundation for the civil rights movement in the 20th century. A promissory note. The Declaration of Independence has guided every American freedom movement, inspired many globally. Martin Luther King Jr. called it a promissory note guaranteeing liberty and equality for all. The civil rights movement sought to hold the nation to its promise, challenging Jim Crow laws and segregation. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education struck down school segregation, ruling that such segregation is a denial of the equality protection of the laws. This declaration energized the civil rights movement. Peacefully protests by King, Rosa Parks, and others led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, advancing the Declaration's promise of equality. It goes on to say, we hold these truths. Americans have long fought to uphold the Declaration of Independence recognition of interests of inherent God-given rights that no government can take away. Although Abigail Adams urged her husband John to remember the ladies, it would take more than a century for women to gain full civic participation. In 1876, suffragettes led by Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton turned to the Declaration to demand equal rights under the law. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified and finally recognized women's right to vote. The Declaration has guided many liberty struggles, from women's suffrage to fighting tyranny in World War I and the Cold War. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy reminded Americans that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. Today, the Declaration still calls Americans to defend freedom and uphold equal rights. The Declaration, whose yellowing parchment and fading, almost illegible lines I saw in the past week in the National Archives in Washington, is still a revolutionary document. For that Declaration to unleash not merely a revolution against the British, but a revolution in human affairs. John F. Kennedy, address at Independence Hall, July 4, 1962. And here's one by Martin Luther King Jr. When the architects of our great republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, August 8th, 1963. Okay, let's go on now if we can. Wall of American Heroes. And these are all pictures of Jackie Robinson, Amelia Earhart, Katherine Johnson, Rosa Parks, and others. Many. Jimmy Doolittle, Billy Graham, P.T. Barnum, and you can see that Walt Disney, Mark Twain, Irving Berlin, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and there's just a ton of these. I'll let you look at them here. Henry Ford, Muhammad Ali, Louis Armstrong, Babe Ruth, Frank Sinatra, and here is George Patton. Together we are a part of one of the greatest stories ever told, the story of America. It is the epic tale of a great nation whose people have risked everything for what they know is right and what they know is true. It is the chronicle of brave citizens who never give up on the dream of a better, brighter future, and the saga of 13 separate colonies that united to form the most just and virtuous republic ever conceived. President Donald J. Trump. There's John Glenn, Ollie Murphy. I mean, just a ton. Laura Ingalls Wilder from Little House on the Prairie. Frank Lloyd Wright. Robert Frost, John Wayne, Aretha Franklin, Jimmy Stewart, Alexander Graham Bell, Grace Hopper, and John D. Rockefeller. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future because the golden age of America has only just begun. President Donald J. Trump, State of the Union, March 4, 2025.
From that moment on, the United States of America became the greatest force for freedom, justice, equality, and love in the history of the world. From Philadelphia, burning torches that passed down from one generation to the next. From the soldiers who crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve of 1776 to the heroes of Normandy, the astronauts who landed on the great American flag in the moon. Because of freedom, pride, the Declaration of Independence, every year of American heroes to reach further and aim higher.
I don't know. Yeah, I want to know what we did. Yeah. Well, I guess if you scan that. Yeah.
Westward expansion, and that's just a whole bunch of these. 1859, adding Hawaii and Alaska. You can just read these. Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. The utmost good faith shall always be observed toward the Indians. Their lands of property shall never be taken from them without their consent. The founding of the Union. How 13 colonies became 50 states. When 13 colonies declared independence, they became the first states and laid the foundation for a new nation. After the Revolution, Britain ceded land west of the Appalachian Mountains and east of the Mississippi River, doubling the young republic's size. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787, later affirmed by the Constitution, established the legal process for the new territories to join the Union. Once recognized and populated, territories could draft constitutions to seek Congress approval for statehood. Importantly, the ordinance banned slavery in those territories, making it the first major Importantly, the ordinance banned slavery in those territories, making the first major national law to do so, setting a precedent for the future. This process led to the admission of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase added 828,000 square miles, opening the Midwest, Great Plains, and Rockies. Later, treaties expanded America's borders. The Adams-Onis Treaty brought Florida. The Oregon Treaty secured the Pacific Northwest, and the Treaty of the Guadalupe Hidalgo added the Southwest California. Congress annexed Texas in 1845, and the Homestead Act of 1862 fueled by Minnesota, Montana, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Between 1791 and 1951, 37 states joined the original 13, ending with Alaska and Hawaii. Each developed a district distinct history, culture, and industry, yet all remained united by one constitutional principle of liberty, equality, and consent as the government as proclaimed in 1776. Yeah, the happy union of these states is a wonder. Their constitution, the miracle, their example, the hope of liberty throughout the world. James Madison, September 1st, 1829. Okay.
We agreed on one fundamental truth.
Okay, I think that ends the tour of this museum, 250th anniversary museum trailer, this truck. I think that ends it. I'm sorry it's so noisy. I hope everything come out all right. It was incredibly noisy in here today, but I tried my best. Hopefully you got something out of it today. Thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, I'll try to, hopefully everything will be all right once I get everything uploaded. It is so incredibly noisy in here though, it's not even funny. And there's still look at that line. Oh my gosh. It's going to be crazy. I think I'm going to get out of here, take some pictures. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, we'll see you on the next video. So, goodbye for now.